Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint and Fabrication. Well, right back on Project Ruby today, and if you guys have been following along, you know she's in excellent shape, but she does have some holes in her from rust. So that's what we're going to tackle today, some of these rust holes. And we're going to get started right around the tail lights. If you guys remember, there was some heavy pitting and some holes that rusted all the way through. One about big around as a racer head. So we're going to go ahead and weld those in today. We're not going to section out pieces of the tail light. I do have chunk. I cut some pieces off the old donor car and I was going to section them in there, but I realized, you know what, that's actually more seaming and more welding than just welding in these holes. And I'll show you how to do that. I've been using a Mig Welder on thin sheet metal, you know, most of my life. So I've got a lot of tricks to show you how to get that done and have it really come out super nice without cutting out pieces and welding in something new. So we're going to work on that. We also have some holes in the floorboard. We're going to take care of one here in the wheel well. We got to take care of that one we made ourselves to get that body bolt out. And there's a couple I just realized how they got there, and we're going to take a look at those too. So I'm sure we're going to have a lot more surprises, and there's going to be a lot more holes to fill, but that's what we're tackling today. So let's jump right to it. Okay, so I already got started on this side because you guys know I'm really anxious to keep working on Ruby, and shooting video and editing and everything, it takes 3 or 4 times longer than just me working. So we'll be jumping ahead and just updating you guys later. I just want to keep my foot on the gas and keep going on this thing. So if you guys recall, there was a hole right here. Let's see if I can find a picture. And as you can see, there were pits and stuff in there, and now they're gone. So, and I've got a shot behind it. If you guys can see right here, see how flat those welds are? I did not grind those. I didn't do anything. The way I got that done is I clamped a piece of copper back there. It acted as a heat sink, and then it allowed the welds to lay flat. And so basically you don't have anything to do when you're done. On the front side, you've got to grind them smooth and, you know, file them out and everything. But on the back side, they're basically ready to go. So I also did some work up here. There was a pit there, and we had some pits along here, so I took care of. Now, on the other side, I've already started over here a little bit too. Now, this lip right here was pretty chewed up. It was rusted away in 2 or 3 spots, and I went ahead and rebuilt that too, just by using the Mig Welder. So, and then what we're going to be working on right now is we've got some pits all the way through. It's a little chewed up here on top. I don't know if you guys can see, but there's a hole right there. And then we've got a hole right there. So let's go ahead and jump right to it. I'll grab the welder, get my little copper heat sink, and we'll take care of it. Okay, before I do any welding, I want to make sure the welder is welding well. You don't want to be over there trying to weld in a rust pit or a hole and have the welder acting up on you. So I do a little test right here. You can see they laid down pretty nice. Now, the way I adjust my welder, there is no 18 gauge setting on this welder, right? So I go, there's a 16 gauge and a 20 gauge. So I basically split the difference. Whatever they tell me for that, I just go half on, you know, halfway in between, and that gets me pretty good. Now, I'm using about a 3/4 inch stick out on here, and that will allow you to get that kind of build without too much penetration, and that's what you want to weld in these rust holes. If you use a really short stick out, you know, having the MIG gun really close, it's going to push right through. And what you want to do is just, you know, weld right in that hole, and that's it. Not trying to get penetration. The sheet metal is 19 gauge. You don't have to worry about penetration. So you want to get the weld on there to fill the hole in, and that's it. And each one I'll do, it'll just look like that. I won't try to weld in the hole. It'll be a series of dots just like that. And then we can grind it, and we should be done. Okay, here's my copper backing. And this is just a piece of 1/2 inch copper pipe that I kind of cut and I split open and hammered it flat. You see a hole right there. That's where I got too much heat on it one day. I was trying to fill in something, and I actually melted the copper, so it actually kind of fused it to it. Copper and steel will not weld together. You can break it apart, but you can put a hole, and they will try to fuse themselves together. It's not very strong. So all I did was bend a little bend in here about the thickness of this plane right here, and what we're going to do is we're going to stick it back here, and you may think, well, that's pretty thin copper, Mark. It's not going to really help you. For what we're doing here, it's more for a backer than a heat sink, but it does offer quite a bit of heat sink. And the length on this will get hot all the way back here, and then it'll cool down really quickly. So it helps pull the heat away so you don't blow a big hole in this stuff. Now, I know some of you guys are going to say, Mark, you know, you're just, you're putting tape, masking tape over tissue paper. That's just stupid. This is very stout. This is all very strong. It's structurally strong. Most of these are like a pit where the pit kind of drilled a hole through it. The whole area isn't weak. You can see me pulling on it here. It's not, you know, it's not fragile. So we're going to be welding these in. And I'll tell you right now, if you're not sure, as soon as you strike the arc, you'll know. Because if it goes like, you know, you weld in aluminum foil, you'll know that you're going to have to cut a piece and put a piece in there, right? And I don't think that's going to happen here. It hasn't happened yet. And like I said, I've been doing this a while, so I'm a pretty good judge. But sometimes you never know until you strike the arc and see what that base material is going to do for you. So we're going to go ahead and clamp this up, and you want it clamped up in there tight. So I'm going to do these two little holes right here. I got these little, these are just little Harbor Freight clamps, and I'm going to get them pretty close, not too close, because I have a tendency to weld my clamps to whatever I'm working on by accident when I get them too close, and then I got to cut them loose. So we've got that clamped up there so I can see the copper through that one hole right there. So let me grab the welder, and we're going to go ahead and get these two, and then we'll move over. We got a little one here, and then we're going to get this one on the edge. Okay, some of you may not know what I mean by stick out. So our stick out is from the tip right here to the end of your wire. So that's about 3/4 of an inch. That's what we want to hold when we're welding this. We don't want to get in there super tight. We want to stay back a little bit, okay? And you don't want a fan. You don't want any wind blowing around because your shielding gas is going to be, you know, farther away. You can actually pull your nozzle and pull it forward a little bit to try to help. So your stick out is still the same because the tip is still farther inside there, but you're going to get better shielding gas. So let's see if we can get this welded up. Now you see there's a hole there and there's a hole on that side. So I'm going to chase it a little bit. I think I've got them. Get a little close to my clamp. I don't want to weld my clamp up there. And it looks pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and grind these, and then we'll look from the other side. If we see light, we know we have a hole or a pit, and we'll go ahead and hit them again. So I'm going to move it over, and we're going to go ahead before we do any grinding, and we're going to take care of this one right on this edge right here. It's already rusted all the way through to the edge of the sheet metal, which can be very tricky. So let me set that up. We'll come back and get that welded. Okay, so here's the hole right here, if you guys can see it, right there. Now this is pretty challenging because it's thin and you're at the edge, and you know, it's just going to be tough. So we're going to see what we can do. I'm going to clamp this up here, and I'm going to push it all the way to the top to make sure that it's all the way on. Now we've got one right there too, but I'm going to concentrate just on this one because it's so big. Just like that. Now I can't even get my fingernail in there, so I know it's tight. So that's the key. So we're going to go ahead and start back here, and then we're going to work our way forward. It's probably going to blob out on there, but we'll grind that smooth. So let me grab the welder and see what we can do. Okay, we got it. There's a hole over here and a little one right there. So I'm going to get those busted out real quick, And then I've got 2 pits down here a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and knock those out, and then we'll take a look at it from the back, and then we're going to grind these smooth and see how they came out. Okay, there's the welds. That one we had to pile up pretty good because it was right on the edge right there. So they all came out pretty well. I had a little tiny itty bitty one there, and now look how big the weld is. As soon as I hit it, it went burp, burp, and it just kept growing. So I was like, oh, here we go, but I was able to knock it out. So let's go ahead and take a look from the backside. Okay guys, hopefully you can see that. Now see how flat those welds are? So we don't have to worry about cleaning it up inside here. I may reach in there with something and just, make sure there's no dingleberries or stalactites sticking out. But all in all, that looks pretty good. And once we get it ground, we're going to look through here and see if there's any pits or anything, and then we'll weld them again until we don't see any daylight through there. But let me go ahead and switch around, and we'll get the grinder out and try to grind these things smooth. Okay guys, I'm not going to bore you with me grinding, but I'll show you another trick I like to do. I like to use a cutoff wheel to do some of this really intricate grinding like this. A regular grinding wheel, you know how it gets curved and you don't know where you're at, you're always checking. This I can actually get in here, almost hold it flat to the sheet metal because I have access on here. I can hold it just off of there and actually cut the top of the welds off. And that helps a lot. So, you can just kind of turn it on. And just cut right across there. So by cutting the tops off, it saves me a lot of time and effort, and then I can kind of keep an eye on it, a lot easier. They do have grinding wheels with holes in them, so you can actually, it's spinning so fast you can see right through what you're sanding or grinding. So I'm going to go ahead and get the tops off all of these, and then do a little more grinding, and that'll bring you back, and we'll check them out. Okay, here we are after grinding. I didn't use anything but the cutoff wheel, and once I cut the tops off all those welds, I went ahead and just slowly laid it very flat and just slowly carved away until they were pretty smooth. Now I did have 2 little spots that had little pinholes, so I welded those again. So now let's just hit it with some 60 grit right here, and then we'll switch over to 80, and then we'll see how it comes out. Feels pretty good right there. Let me get the tops over here, and then we'll switch over to some 80 grit, smooth this out a little bit more, and then we'll see where we're at. Okay, just about done. Now this is just some pitting right here, but we do have a pinhole there and there. I'm just going to do the same thing, put the copper there, hit it real quick, and grind it smooth. But we're straight across here. We're flat this way, and we're looking really good this way. It's a little high right here. I need to tap it down. And we got, when I ran the DA over it, I discovered 2 little low spots right here, so I have to tap those out from the backside. But other than that, it's solid now. Now look, I'll pushing on it, pulling on it. That is solid right there. So no reason to section this whole thing out just for a few holes. So we busted that out fairly quickly, way faster than if we were to cut a piece out and try to fit another piece in, weld a big long seam, then grind the whole seam, and then have to hammer it back straight again. So this is a really good solution. Okay, now we can move on to this one. So all those black spots right there, those are holes. And I did go out to the donor car last night after dinner and took the Sawzall to the floorboard and cut that piece out. I threw it in some muriatic acid, pressure washed it off, treated it with phosphoric acid, so it's ready to go. So all we have to do is figure out what cuts we want to make in the floorboard. Then we can just slide that piece up underneath, scribe it, cut it, and get it in there. I don't have really a way of clamping it, so we'll figure something out, but I think we'll TIG weld this one in just for practice. I'm just going to use a cutoff wheel, and this is a Sharpie mark, so I'm just going to put the wheel, it's almost the exact same width. I'm just going to put it right on the mark and cut my way around. Go, just like that. Okay, I'm going to get a file and we'll clean up these edges real nice, get the corners cleaned up, and we'll find some way of propping that piece up underneath there. Okay, I got a Sharpie on there. I lined it up pretty much exactly where it was, where the old one was, so all we have to do is scribe it. I've got a couple of boards up underneath propping this up, so hopefully it doesn't move on me. Scribed. The Sharpie helps me see the scribe line when I'm cutting. All right, let's get this cut to fit and then see if we can fit it in here and get the TIG welder out. Okay, I finagled a couple of clamps through the hole right here, and it's clamped pretty good. And as you can see, it's a pretty good gap. Not perfect, but it's not bad. And then I don't know if you guys can see right here, see that light shining through? I found a few pits right here, so we may have to section that out. I'm going to try to weld those in with a MIG, just like we did around the tail lights. If that works, great. If not, we'll cut a piece out and go ahead and change that out as well. So let me grab the MIG to get this tacked and all flush. Then we'll get the TIG out and get it welded up. Okay guys, look at that TIG welding. Not bad, huh? Yeah. Yikes. Burned a hole, burned a hole, burned a hole. Burned a hole, burned a hole. Time to switch over to the MIG and fix this up. But I got a lot of good runs in. Still need a lot of practice, but I'm getting there. Let me fix this thing up and we'll take a look at it. Okay, all done. You can tell the seam right in this area is a lot nicer. I could actually reach that with my hand underneath and hammer and dolly that weld right in this area, so it looks a lot better. In the back here, I couldn't reach it, so it's got a little bit of a lip there, but you know, it's not that big a deal. It's just the floorboard. Once we put the ruby on the rotisserie, I'll be able to grind the other side, smooth it all out. I do have a hole right here. I started to weld and I ran out of welding wire, so I had to run into town, pick up some more 023. So I got a brand new 10-pound spool on the Mig Welder, so we're good to go there. So I'm going to finish that up, get that ground, and we should be good to go. If you guys are trying to weld thin sheet metal with 030, really you need to switch over to 023, 024, 025, whatever is available for you. It allows you to run a little bit hotter settings and just get in and get out, get in and get out. So our next step is this hole right here. And that one has got me scratching my head because very hard to get to. There's a little piece of sheet metal behind on the inside of the fender weld, and how do I cut that out is the biggest question. So I'm going to think about it in a minute, and then we'll come up with a solution and get after it. Okay, so we got a game plan. So you can see right there I marked the hole with a Sharpie and back all the way to the good material. And instead of trying to cut it out, I'm going to simply just use the burr tool and just grind it close to that line. Try to make sure the line is nice and smooth, so when we scribe the patch in, it's a little easier to cut. There is a piece of sheet metal on the outside there. I bent that back away. Sometimes you have to be a little destructive to get a repair done and then just repair it later. So we got that bent out of the way. I'm going to try to grind all the way around that and see what happens. I won't film any of it. It's just me down laying on my belly here trying to grind that out nice and clean. So I'll bring you back when we're scribing in the patch. Okay, that went surprisingly well. I have to remember that trick for next time. So I just try to follow my line and just make a nice smooth pass. So when we make the patch, I've already got a piece of sheet metal wedged up in there. We just need to scribe it. So if I make the lines nice and smooth, it makes it that much easier to get the patch to fit right. So it's ready to scribe. I just had to get creative on clamping here. You know, when you're working by yourself, you got to do what you got to do. So I got a piece of wood just jammed in the fender well here to hold that up in there. So I'm going to scribe it. We'll get it trimmed up and get it fitted in there. Okay, we got the patch cut and fit. I've got a magnet holding it up in there. I will weld it from the other side, from the outside. The magnet will stay just long enough for me to get it tacked and kind of lined up, and then I'll get that out of the way, because if you guys don't already know, magnets really screw up your welding. I don't know if it affects the arc or the puddle or what, but it really makes it difficult to weld. So I'll just get it tacked up, kind of get it lined up, and then we'll weld it from the other side. All right, it's all tacked up. Looks like it's lined up pretty good. Let's get this thing welded. All right, I had to chase that one there a little bit, but we got to weld it in. Okay, here it is from with a weld side. You can see these welds are all pretty small, except for up here. That's where the hole blew out. You saw it from the other side. I had to chase it a little bit, so you kind of have to, you know, blow out the weld on there a little bit to fill that hole, but it came out pretty well. Now, if you're doing exterior sheet metal, you're not going to weld like I did, where I just kind of kept hitting it and going all the way around, because that's just going to warp your panel. You know, you'll do, you'll have your panel tacked in, and at each tack, then you'll, hit it, and then cool it with the air hose, move over an inch or whatever, 2 inches, hit it, and cool it, hit it, and just work your way around. And use that air hose to cool the panel. It really pulls the heat out and keeps the heat from migrating and warping your panel. So air hose works great. Back in the old days, we used wet rags. But we were using gas torches. There were no Mig welders, no TIG welders available for guys like me. And so we would gas weld it and cool it with a wet rag, and it just rusted everything. So air hose works great. So let me get this ground up real quick. The other side really doesn't need much grinding. I'll hit it real quick. We'll bend the sheet metal up, maybe hammer on a little bit, and this one will be done. Okay, we got it ground up nice and smooth. It looks really good, especially for an inner fender weld that's going to get bed liner more than likely. But we've got the sheet metal bent back up. Everything looks good. Let's check out the inside. Okay, here it is from the inside. Came out pretty nice. Now, none of this is going to get seen, so it's not a huge deal, but I still like to do as nice as work as I can within reason. I'm not going to spend hours on this when it just doesn't matter. So you have to say when, sooner or later, right? Even when you're working on the outside of the car. But it's nice to do good work, and if you guys are new to this, these are the perfect ones to do to get some practice in. You got to get trigger time with the gun just to get better. That's the way it is. And these, you don't have to worry about warpage. You don't have to worry about being seen later. You can screw up a little bit, fix your screw up, and then move on and do better the next time. So these are really the excellent ones to work on to get some skills and get yourself going. So we're pretty much done. I don't know of any other holes. There were these holes we were going to talk about, and I finally figured out what's going on. These right here, there's one here and one over there. And the deal is there's 2 bolts sticking down from the cross member underneath Ruby. And I finally figured out how those got there because they weren't factory. What they did was they drilled a hole, and the bolt, I don't know if you guys see the bolt head, but what they did, they drilled a hole all the way through here and there, and then drove that thing through like a nail. That's actually shaped like the head of a bolt. They just drove it through there. So we're going to fix those later once we get the car on the rotisserie. I can be able to cut those bolts and drive them back out and then patch those holes. These brackets are going to come out for the seats. And also, while I'm here right now, I think I'm going to go ahead and cut these brackets off right here, here, and I got a couple up here, and that's for the back seat. Now, if you guys know, I'm going to use seats out of the 2005, 2006 GTO, and they're kind of the shaped bucket ones, but this car, Ruby, is a lot wider than a 2006 GTO, right? So we're going to have to get creative to make those seats wider, and they're going to mount totally different. So these brackets are not going to be usable, so I want to cut them out of the way, and I can see some light coming out from underneath that one, and I think this one too. So these are kind of gas welded in. I don't know if I put those in or not, to tell you the truth, but they do need to come out because they're not usable for the newer style seats. And I will save them just in case we were able to repurpose them somehow to hold those seats in. But I'm going to go ahead and cut those out, get all the holes filled, get that smoothed out, and because in a future video coming up hopefully fairly soon, we're going to start figuring out how to get those seats mounted in here, because I want to get all the welding and all that kind of stuff done before we even start throwing seam sealer around or spraying DTM up in here. So that's coming up real soon, I hope, and it'll be kind of fun to figure that out. Okay guys, that pretty much wraps up this video on welding in Ruby's rust holes in her body. Now you saw on the back here, I welded in some pretty big holes with just the Mig Welder with that copper behind it, and it can be done. Now it's worth a shot in my opinion. If you've got a few like I had here, you give it a try. If it doesn't work out, you're just going to cut the piece out anyways and weld a new piece in, right? So I think really you have nothing to lose by giving it a try, and it's all structurally sound. There's no weakness in this thing. So it worked out really well for me, and it was a lot less work and a lot less damage to Ruby as far as warpage or anything else by me just hitting those small spots instead of cutting out a big piece and then having 12 or 14 inches of weld in there to hammer and grind and try to straighten back out and then try to get it right later. So give it a shot. It may work out for you. We had to cut a couple little patch panels for the other holes. They were way too big, but we got those fixed up as well. So she's not near as holy as she was just a few minutes ago. So I'm really happy to get that busted out. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Mash that bell and drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you guys. We'll see you on the next one.